Let's say it's the late 90s and you dream of making your own PlayStation game. Not just joining the gaming industry and working on a game, but making your own, directing it, calling all the shots. To execute your vision and turn it into a PlayStation game, the barrier for entry is high. You'll need a team, you'll need expensive workstations, official software development kits, a fax machine and an office and the money to pay people's wages. It's expensive and very, very complicated. Like making a feature film. Although, of course, in the film industry there are indie films out there with a lot less money behind them. Truly, anyone with a camera and enough gumption can make their own home movie, and in that same spirit, ever since there have been computers in bedrooms, there have been bedroom programmers tapping away at their ZX Spectrums and Commodore 64s making games. Some games never left their first computer and were only played by the people that made them. Others shopped around and eventually published, and others still distributed on cassette tapes attached to the front of computer magazines. Technology marches on, or leaps really, from 8 to 16 to 32 bits in 12 years. The PlayStation is where we're up to now. It can render over 100,000 polygons per second, it has the massive storage potential of compact discs, and if you were born before Return of the Jedi and knew a little bit of C, well that narrows it down a lot, Ken Kutaragi has something for you. Net Yaroze, Japanese for Internet, Let's Do It Together, was a special mail-order package containing a black, region-free PlayStation, a disc and a dongle to let it run Net Yaroze games, a CD for your own provided PC with the software to make the games, and a cable to connect the two together so that you could then send the game straight into the PlayStation's 2 megabytes of RAM once you'd made it. You could also play the hundreds of other games made by the rest of the small Net Yaroze community shared on the net in a dedicated forum. As for the wider world of PlayStation owners, a chosen few Net Yaroze games were immortalised on demo discs for all to play. This is one such demo disc, the official Australian PlayStation Collection Q1, the self-proclaimed biggest PlayStation demo disc ever. It is the localised version of the UK's essential PlayStation 12 and features playable demos of Metal Gear Solid, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, Roll Cage, A Bug's Life, Cool Borders 3, Devil Dice, Wipeout 2097, Pool Shark, and the original Gran Turismo. Alongside those 9 playable demos were 2 videos, one for Ridge Racer Type 4 and one for Metal Gear Solid with somewhat misleading PC graphics. This demo disc hit news agencies in April 1999, the same month The Matrix hit cinemas. Back on topic, the 12th item on this fancy high-tech ring is what makes this the biggest PlayStation demo disc ever. The Net Yaroze compilation is a gateway to another world of gameplay. 14 full indie games, giving this disc more replay value than many $80 retail releases. I'm SnakeOfBacon, and I've wanted to make my own video games since I was a child. I still haven't done that yet, but I've been making videos about video games since I was 14. These games were the subject of my first video game review, released over 11 years ago. While I've loved reading your comments over the years, I don't love that old shallow and desultory video. Let's do this properly. Presents ReReview of some Net Yaroze games. We begin at the top of the page with the first number, which is 1. Let's get on with it. Total Soccer Yaroze is a top-down, 3-dimensional association football game developed by Charles Chapman in 8 weeks. I assume Mr. Chapman also developed the original game, or co-developed it. I have no idea how many people made it. I can't find the credits for somewhat obscure Windows football game, Total Soccer. I know it had a sequel, Total Soccer 2000, and I know this Yaroze version is very, very impressive. Consider that the year is 1998 and 3D football games have only been around for 4 years. And this game, included freely on a demo disc, has all the features you could expect from any 3D football game released around that time. Or just about all of them. The crowd noises build in excitement as you get closer to the goal, the pitch looks like grass or close enough, the players have different stats based on their positions, and there are 74 teams to choose from, which you can pit against each other in customizable cups and leagues. This is not sub-total soccer, it is total, it's the whole soccer. Training drills, team formations, and even an injury system. So there's a fair bit of depth here, yet it's also a very accessible, very arcadey and very fast football game. Each half is only 90 seconds long and there's no setting to change the length of a match. So you have to get in and score quick, or be scored upon. You play using only the D-pad, a pass button and a kick button. There is no sprint, there is no manual player switching, but the automatic player switching works remarkably well. When you inevitably run past the player you should be tackling, it switches very quickly to the next nearest player. It just seems like magic. A beautiful program that knows exactly what I want. It's a very good feeling to win a football match. I should know. I used to play as a child. I'm not very good at this game, but I did win against Arsenal once. Remember, all these teams are vowel swapped. I'm Cholso, and this match against Manchester United was my most difficult challenge, and one that I completely failed. I will blame that on my guess that since it was the 90s and Manchester United were extraordinarily successful, Manchester has all the highest stats, so they're just invincible. Please, Gugs, leave me alone. Of course, there was a 7th goal in the final second, and as much fun as I was having losing, the save button doesn't work because it's a Net Yaroze game. That's just a holdover from the PC version. If you want to play a full league, budget yourself 2.5 hours to play all 38 weeks in a row. Total Soccer Yaroze is one item on a sub-menu of a demo disc, and yet it is also a full football game and a great example of the potential of the Net Yaroze. Total Soccer left a long legacy. The sequel I mentioned earlier, Total Soccer 2000, was released not just for PC, but also for Game Boy Color. Charles Chapman went on to found Exient Entertainment, developed Total Soccer 2002 for Game Boy Advance, and following that, all of the FIFA games for Game Boy Advance and DS, and N-Gage and Gizmondo. While Total Soccer isn't famous alone, little parts of it live on in dozens of other games on hundreds of thousands of cartridges. Now for something completely different. Blitter Boy. Who is he? Well, he's the one in the middle with the unusual gun who's shooting at ghosts, because this is Blitter Boy in Operation Monster Mall by Chris Chaddock. In this top-down oblique shooter, your mission is to rescue the babies abandoned in the food court of a mall, beleaguered by arcade game baddies that have somehow escaped their machines and are now lumbering around, doing not very much. But still, it's an intense and highly dangerous situation, and so Blitter Boy was called in as he's the expert in the field. After all, who else would know how to deal with video game sprites come to life but a Blitter Boy? A blitter being a circuit that, in the days before GPUs, handled the movement of bitmaps around memory, which is how sprites function. You need a blitter to move the sprites around. So, appropriate name. Anyway, the goal here is to get all the babies to the televator in the middle of the room, ideally in one long conga line, because that gets you more money. I missed one. Once you've recovered the 6 babies, you're tasked with clearing the room of all remaining enemies, and then you can ride the televator yourself, up to the next room to do it all over again with more difficulty. A clear example of what is, in the journalist's parlance, a gameplay loop. A very well-constructed, simple, arcadey gameplay loop. When you are ready to go again, and only then, you may press X to advance. It's nice to get a little breather between stages because they do go on for quite a few minutes of very intense action. From here on, you'll see new floor colours, more enemies, and you'll encounter the rest of the items, such as fruit drops. Yep, when you shoot an enemy with fruit drops drops from the sky and crushes them. I don't know if it's any more morbid than just exploding, but it's definitely funnier as they look up at their impending doom. Even the saucers introduced in this level spin out of control as they're crushed with fruit. No, not the lemon! And running over these fruit replenishes your health, making this an extraordinarily powerful weapon. I love the classic cartoon-esque way it's drawn and find it very funny that these harmless arcade fruit are recontextualized as harbingers of inexorable death, but let's not overthink it. So this is the terrible power of gravity, that an accelerating mass of table grapes should bring about my demise. So the other weapon power-up, or polycart, you can pick up is Rainbow Death. Nice little happy rainbow balls that split the enemies into red, green and blue channels, which is another really cool video effect in a game full of them. It also bounces, so if you time it right, you don't have to jump to shoot the flying saucers. And it doesn't harm babies, unlike your regular little pellets that make them start crying, which is not conducive to getting them rescued. There are also defensive power-ups like this holographic decoy, which is extremely effective. It sends every enemy on the stage on a wild goose chase because clearly it looks tastier than Blitter Boy. You can pick up batteries that increase your weapon's range. You can pick up an asteroid belt that can save you from up to 8 enemies, so long as you don't walk into a wall and destroy all the little satellites. You can pick up this lovely, really nicely animated hamburger in a blue box, which is so good it increases your health to maximum. I've had burgers like that, the kind of burgers you remember for years afterwards. You can pick up cans of beans and milk bottles and piggy banks and lots of bronze, silver and gold smiley coins. When you have enough smiley coins, it increases the multiplier on the money sack, but that doesn't multiply the value of the coins, it only multiplies the value of the bonuses from saving babies, so you should probably get on with doing that. Check out this pause screen first. It has this amazing paused tape effect that you'd see on a VHS player, which you might expect from an indie game now for a retro look, but this was contemporary with tapes. This game is just full of amazing video effects, so many that it advertises itself as a video clay production. The game's capable of tricking you into thinking your CRT's turned off, or just amazing you with how many coins are on the screen which is capable of peeling itself around a corner or even melting. It's very well presented. There's also a survival mode where you run around collecting flags, and if you touch a monster a single time, you lose. But then you get a funny little rating, like thumb sucker or utter pants, and maybe if you're really good at survival mode, something better. I'm more into mission mode, and I was having an extremely good run that went for about an hour, until I was finally undone by one of those landmines that the saucers drop. Now they can be destroyed, but only by an exactly placed bouncing rainbow death. But usually they just sit there being annoying. Especially when trying to rescue a baby, the baby hits a landmine and then the game gets stuck in a state that it cannot continue from. That is very unfortunate, but it's not going to detract from my enjoyment of the game. I'll just have to remember next time to make sure I blow up the mines that are closest to the televator. I find Blitter Boy and Operation Monster Mall to be a very enjoyable and aesthetically pleasing game. In other words, it's fun and beautiful. The weapons and items have a satisfying sound design, and while it can get a bit cacophonous, overlaid with the intense arcade music and the screaming of babies and exploding of ghosts, what did you expect? The situation was never going to be quiet. The effort put into this game is palpable. You can feel the 12 months of work that went into these beautifully drawn sprites, perfect collision detection, whimsical weaponry and impressive video effects. It's a joyously playable, magnificently colourful, almost edible Gesamtkunstwerk. In the 1998 Game Developers UK competition, Blitter Boy took home first place in Best Net Yaroze Game and Best Game overall, netting developer Chris Chadwick a well-deserved prize of £6,000. Chris, if you're watching, first of all, thank you so much, and second of all, see all this money raining down the screen? 25th anniversary, wink wink, nudge nudge, Mah Jongg. Wait, what? Oh, Mah Jongg! That's where we're up to now. Mah Jongg, developed by Gerhard Rittenhofer in 10 days. That's a lot less than a year, but does that mean Mah Jongg is any less of a game than Blitter Boy? No, it's still a game, it's just less ambitious and original. There are many thousands of Mah Jongs out there, or Mah Jongg solitaires, I should specify. There are lots of Mah Jongg games too, but Mah Jongg is a game played by 4 players around a table with 144 tiles, each player flipping and trading tiles to create a hand of 14 to 18, divided into 3 sets of 3 or 4, plus a pair of eyes, with the winner determined by the quality of the hand, plus bonuses, and the direction of the wind, or many other factors depending on which variant of Mah Jongg you're playing. They range in difficulty, some are bewilderingly opaque, while others are unfathomably complicated. But Mah Jongg Solitaire is a game using those same tiles arranged in a pretty pattern, and you remove them in pairs. A much simpler game that I'm very bad at. No one really knows the origins of Mah Jongg Solitaire. as a tile-based game, but as a video game, we can trace it back to Brodie Lockhart. In December of 1979, Brodie Lockhart was a 19-year-old student studying at Stanford University in California. He was also a gymnast, and during trampoline practice there, he had a terrible fall, landed on his neck, displacing 2 vertebrae and breaking 2 others. He woke up quadriplegic, attached to a breathing machine. During his long stay in hospital, he learned to type with a mouth stick and was introduced to the Turtle, a Mah Jongg solitaire formation that he would play verbally with the hospital staff to keep his mind busy. As a keen programmer at a time when the average home computer was very basic, and basic was all that it could do, what really interested Brodie was Plato, a cutting-edge system of computer terminals and mainframes networked together over phone lines, like the internet, but a long time before the internet. Being ahead of the curve is expensive, and as much as the teenage Lockhart wanted a Plato terminal for his dorm at Stanford, the cost of that machine and leasing the phone line for it for 6 months would have been over $12,000, about the price of a new Corvette in 1979, so that wasn't happening. During his hospital stay, though, Control Data Corporation heard his story and lent him access to a Plato 5 terminal, which he used to, among other things, make the first Mah Jongg solitaire game called Mah Jongg. 2 words and 2 G's at the end, just like this one. Unlike Net Yaroze Mah Jongg, the 1981 original was running on an esoteric supercomputer with an orange plasma touchscreen, and it was crafted 1 keystroke at a time with a mouth stick. And that includes the graphics. All 42 tile designs made pixel by pixel, without a mouse, without image editing software, from a hospital bed. 5 years later, in 1986, home computers had caught up to the point where they could run a Mah Jongg solitaire game. And so Brodie Lockhart made Shanghai for the Apple Macintosh. It was published by Activision and Sunsoft in Japan and promptly ported to every conceivable platform. Every home computer, every handheld console, home console, and several arcade machines in Japan. The game made a fortune. Brodie eventually received handsome royalties and moved to Hawaii, where he resides to this day. And before the Earth was completely flooded with Mah Jongg solitaire clones, the Shanghai franchise was still selling strongly into the late 90s. There were Shanghai games on the Saturn and even the PlayStation. In fact, there were 3 Shanghai games on the PlayStation, although only the 3rd one was released outside Japan, as Shanghai True Valor. It came out over a year after Net Yaroze Mah Jongg, making Net Yaroze Mah Jongg the first Mah Jongg solitaire game on the PlayStation in the PAL region, which is definitely some sort of nice first for this game to have. There, I found its innovation. I haven't found a way to win, and I don't know why the game cackles at you either. Let's talk about Net Yaroze Mah Jongg. You've got 2 different tile sets, so you can play without the numbers in the corner if you prefer the aesthetics of the larger calligraphy. And there are 18 different dragons in which to arrange your tiles. This one looks a bit like a Pac-Man ghost. Did I pass the Rorschach test? I don't know. I can't tell you which of these dragons is the easiest or hardest, as I've not solved any of them. I'm, as I said before, terrible at Mah Jongg solitaire. To me, the whole game concept is the same as pairing socks. That's not to say it is mundane or boring. Pairing socks can be very relaxing, if you succeed. If, like me, you often have problems finding all your socks, this cackling demon brings about all too familiar feelings of getting to the bottom of a laundry basket and being surrounded by 48 socks that somehow match nothing. And I don't need to be reminded of how bad I am at pairing my socks by a video game. I want to escape. How about a game about escaping? A mood is instantly established. A piercing female scream and toccata and fugue in D minor is shorthand for gothic horror. And this colourful, thin Bauhaus text is reminiscent of old Atari games. So you know you're in for jolly good gothic horror fun. Let's read the description. Our hero is trapped in a maze with lots of hungry monsters. You get to play the hero and avoid those monsters. If they get you, you lose a life. If you lose all your lives, the game is over. grab all the lucky goodies scattered around the maze to earn points and make the exit door open. Go through the exit to get to the next, more challenging level, win a free guy every 10,000 points, and so on. Here we are in a level. It's a maze, there are monsters and goodies, and Edvard Grieg. Bravo to the monster that says meow at random intervals, having perfect musical timing. I'm not sure if they're mummies or zombies, but they sound a bit like cats, and they've always looked to me as though they were made out of sausages. Hence, I termed them Bratwurst cat zombies 11 years ago. That was probably the highlight of the original review, which had almost nothing else in it. It wasn't even 36 words long. So that's why I'm reviewing the game now. What can I tell you about it? It is a maze game. Your goal is to collect the goodies and get out without being eaten by a monster, all the while listening to 5 of the greatest hits of the 19th century. That's not a feature of every maze game, just this one. I described it originally as Pac-Man-esque, but I think the key part of the Pac-Man-esque struggle of maze games is that of 2 competing mesopredators, one carnivorous and one omnivorous, and the omnivore gains the edge over the carnivores occasionally and eats them. Whereas in this game, you don't eat them because we're all humanoids here, and humanoid people don't eat other humanoids, they eat chickens. What was my point? Anyway, you have no recourse against these monsters. You cannot eat them, you cannot fight them, you can only run away. You can do so with either the D-pad or the analog stick. There's analog movement. You don't get analog speed control, although why would you want to walk? You need to hurry. You will also need to think on your feet as you get into more and more intense situations as the monster population grows more numerous and the obstacles get more and more bizarre. I'm not sure if they're all procedurally generated or if there are only a set number of mazes. I do know that they're all possible, but some have really dangerous long corridors that you can get stuck in. If a Bratwurst cat zombie were to walk into the other end of that tube, I would have no way out. So dumb luck will kill you at some point, or just walking straight into the back of one of the sausage folk. It happens sometimes. When the monsters can't see you, they make 90-degree turns, and when they do see you, they turn to face you, lock on, and chase. They're intimidating and relentless. You can stay still for only a moment. You generally need to be on your feet and moving at all times, nimbly, so as not to walk into the back of a mummified Kransky. You'll look silly if you do. In hindsight, it's not very Pac-Man-esque at all. Sure, it's a maze game, but Pac-Man didn't invent maze games, and the similarities it has with picking up things while avoiding being eaten are far outweighed by the similarities it has to the chase scenes from Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, and the Benny Hill Show. If one or both of those were not influences on this game, I don't know what was. Besides classic horror movies. More simply, it's just the ancient game of tag. You can play this game in real life. For added authenticity and haunted maze flair, just get a lot of pairs of brown tights and get a group of people to wear them over their heads. You know, it forces you to stick your arms out and walk around like a monster. I don't know, I haven't tried it in real life, but it just seemed like an inspired idea I should share with you. You've got camera controls in this game. You can play at low angle if you really want to suffer, or raise the angle higher to see more of the maze. If this one could stop running down... There we go. Sometimes they just get in your way and you need to let them leave the hallway. Other times they stay in the hallway and you get eaten or ouched or whatever it is that's implied to happen when you're caught. Running along to Hungarian Rhapsody 2 does not make things easier. It's a good thing that the next level is always a counterpoint to that. We go from the frenetic Hungarian Rhapsody number 2 to the calming, soothing Waltz of the Flowers from The Nutcracker by Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. While the mad hammerings of Franz Liszt on the piano make the chase seem like a frantic comedy in the vein of Tom and Jerry, this ballet recontextualizes the chase to be a dance. Beautiful. I might as well go through the rest of the soundtrack. In the Hall of the Mountain King. You may have heard it anywhere else. The music of Peer Gynt has pervaded pop culture for a lifetime, but that is because it is good, distinctive music, and it happens to suit Haunted Maze very well. Next is a slightly wonky MIDI to an excerpt from 5 minutes into the Barber of Seville Overture by Gioacchino Rossini. Rossini must have always wanted this overture to be famous because he used it in 2 other operas before it got really big 207 years ago in The Barber of Seville, which was by no means the first opera based on the 1775 French play, but it is the one everyone remembers. And it is the only opera to have 2 compositions featured in the soundtrack of Haunted Maze. Surely you'll recognise Largo al Factotum. No? You need me to sing along? Largo al factotum della città, largo. La 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 la. Presto bottega che la baggia, presto. La 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 la. Ah, che bel vivere, che bel piacere per un barbiere. Di qualità, di qualità. Ah, bravo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, bravo. In conclusion, Blocky Ben and the Bourravos Boys, or Night of a Living Sujuk, or Haunted Maze, is a wonderfully fun and very simple all-action arcade game. I would have loved a longer soundtrack, but this game was made in only 13 days by one developer over 24 years ago. Besides, maybe no more music would fit within that 2 megabyte limit. Either way, this game, developed in so brief a time, will stick with me in my mind for the rest of my life. Speaking of minds, how sharp is yours? Are you a paragon of logical thinking that finds most sliding tile puzzles too easy? Are you familiar with the video game Sokoban, where you have to retry every time you make a mistake because you cannot pull boxes and only push them? Well, Pushy IIb is a Sokoban clone for you. The difference being that you play as Pushy and you push things, ideally not into corners, because if you do so you are doomed, and everything makes funny noises. Pushy itself goes bloop, 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 and the boxes go bwee, and the menus go bwee, and it's all very whimsical. When I played 10 years ago, I was unable to... it does that sometimes. Anyway, I was unable to get past level David before, but I was not very interested in this sort of thing. When you get a bit further into the game, you'll find it's not all boxes, there are also balls. The difference being that the balls roll, and you can't stop them, which adds further complexity to the game. You can score points for every 1/10 of a second that you're under the target time. In this case, I took more than 50 seconds, so I received 0 points, and I found that in most levels where I had to think for a bit or retry 1 or 2 times or more, I received no points. But there is no point to this scoring system at all unless you're a speedrunner, as the levels are set and they don't change. The score then would be a measure of who is the fastest at completing a set of instructions that have been written down, based on the optimal path for Pushy 2, which no one on Earth knows. Maybe someone will if they write a program to try all the 11 squigga billion combinations of how to walk around the Pushy 2 levels. But for now, I think you should just focus on playing as many levels as you like for fun. Maybe you could find out how many levels the game has. Very few people on Earth have beaten them all. I don't know how many levels the game has, all I know is I've completed less than half of them. After the 10th level, the next 2 are green. Deborah and Philip were pretty challenging. I made it through Deborah, and Philip had me stumped on my first go, but thankfully you can launch the game again later, input the password, which is the name of the level, hope you remembered it and how it was spelt, and then you're all set to continue. I'm also very thankful for that fishnet web page, the address of which is on this game's splash screen. It's still there. Actually, the address is different, but it's easy enough to find. And on FredW's homepage, which hasn't been updated since 2006, so it's a miracle it's still being hosted, you can download the original Acorn Archimedes versions of Pushy 1 and 2. So there you go, I didn't even know about Pushy 1, I certainly didn't know it was originally made for the Archimedes. I also don't know how to work ArcM, the Archimedes emulator, so I won't be playing those anytime soon, but maybe later I can work that out. Fred worked with quite a few studios in the Leamington Spa gaming industry over the years, including Blitz Games, where he was lead programmer on the Chicken Run game. Do you know there's a new Chicken Run movie coming this year? That's how I found out. I was reading about the Chicken Run game. I'm shocked that there's a... Anyway, more important than that was that he was also a programmer on Fusion Frenzy, one of my favourite party games, and Big Bumpin', one of the 3 Xbox and Xbox 360 games commissioned by Burger King to be made by Blitz in the UK, exclusively for North American Burger King restaurants. I mean, why? Why does the rest of the world have to miss out on getting cheap games at a burger restaurant? The novelty of that. I understand the distribution costs, but it's such a lost opportunity. Anyway, Pushy IIb, or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the strange bloopy noises, or take arms against the mute button, to relax, to enjoy the game and not to dream about strange beeping noises. I don't know. Depending on your temperament, of course, this game could keep you entertained for a long time or drive you mad very quickly. In my case, it took 38 minutes. The last 8 minutes spent uselessly fumbling around the 13th level of the game, codenamed Heidi, were too much for me. To quote my favourite film,
I don't want to be part of your big push.
Psychon in stereo. Now this album takes a massive tonal shift as we move from the bloopy thing that pushes boxes to Psychon, a dark game with Helvetica font like Gran Turismo 1 and 2, and really good music, and great audio design all round. Check out this noise. And combined with the video effect, that dark swoop, it's just cool stuff. A lot of PS1 games do those cool fade transitions, but anyway, cool stuff. Psychon is a cool game, and if you dive into it like I just did, without waiting a little bit longer on the main menu, you'll have no idea what you're doing. You're shooting at people, and there are some buttons on the floor. That may be enough for you to go on and just play it by instinct, but not for me. I'd rather know what I'm doing. Well, for starters, they're not buttons, they're destruct globes. Activate the 4 destruct globes and find the lift. Right, that's my job. Destruct globe. What the heck is a destruct globe? Does it aid or prevent destruction? I don't know. All I know is I'm clearing out this labyrinth of people who spin around and occasionally lob grenades at me. It's a point and shoot run and gun, not a twin stick. So it's a bit like Blitter Boy in that regard, and there is once again a strafe button. This time I can demonstrate it for you. You can spin on the spot. I should have done that in Blitter Boy. When you take damage, in this case from an electrified floor or something, you make the same sounds as your enemies do when in pain. Although when they die, they fall on the floor, and when you die, you spin around and shoot blood in all directions while shrinking, which is very weird. But my point was that both the player character and the somewhat vague enemies are both human, or both non-human, whatever. What I haven't worked out is why I'm shooting them. At its most optimistic, this could be a Judge Dredd-like story where I'm stopping these crazy criminals with grenades who are keen on blowing up everything, and I have to defuse all their destruct globes to keep the public safe. Or, if this is more of the grim darkness of the far future sort of game, then perhaps I'm actually a Space Marine in training against live targets, which would explain the tracking of my accuracy and efficiency in-universe, not just in-game. It would also explain why I'm shooting at people in identical outfits. They're prisoners, and they're locked up in rooms that I have keycards to, and I'm exterminating them as quickly as I can, because that's part of the job I'm applying for. This prison spaceship is clearly overfilled, and if I don't clear it out fast enough, the destruct globes will kill me or all of us. Anyway, which of those is closer to the intent of the story of the game, I don't know because no story is given. I do know it's very fun, and after the first level things get harder because the destruct globes are placed further apart, in levels with more twists and turns and enemies and gates and nooks and crannies and air conditioning units. Every time you go through a gate you also expend a key card, although you find so many of them I don't think I've ever run out before. What I have had problems with is running out of time, because there are just so many dead-end paths. It's very easy to get totally lost in a level if you're not really committed to running to that exit and figuring out which way it is, and remembering where you are. And lastly, not getting stuck looking at the secret room that you can't enter, which is just a little bit of mean game design. Anyway, when you're dead... I think I found this very scary when I was a child. Now I find it absolutely hilarious. The "you are dead" face, which is blurry for some reason. I don't know why you're shaking while you're dead, but yes, you are. You get to put in your high score if you have one. You won't be able to keep it for very long, but there it is. And then you can continue, which is nice, although your continues are limited. The other thing besides time that will kill you is of course the enemies. They only attack by walking into you and spinning, but that's still dangerous, especially if you respawn on top of one. Take care not to do that. Being better at the game now than I was when I was in primary school, I was able to make it past the second level and acquire a shotgun. Yes, the weapon pickups are real. The shotgun makes a bigger blast, a louder noise, and does more damage. There's also this invulnerability pickup that was not mentioned at the start of the game. It lasts only 5 seconds. That's a bit brief. They last 30 seconds in Doom. At the end of level 4 there's another gun. I think it's the machine pistol. It fires in 5-shot bursts. For decades I'd only skimmed the surface of Psychon, but now that I'm able to get further through it I find out more things like fake walls. There's at least this one in level 5, there's probably fake walls in every level, but behind this one, it's another weapon pickup. I think this must be the auto gun. It fires in 6-shot bursts. This means it's better. Sure, it eats ammo like a duck eats corn, but it's better. Especially when on later levels, you'll find that the enemies have thicker skin and the default gun just doesn't cut it. Thankfully, there's no time limit on weapon pickups. They last until you lose all your lives and hit continue, or pick up another weapon. Psychon runs at full speed at a slick and smooth 50 Hz, although some very busy rooms cause the game to slow down. Particularly in level 3, the shotgun and 118 enemies on the floor do not mix. More than 7 enemies on screen and far too many bullet effects per second cause the game to run at a little bit over half speed, but I can forgive the PS1 for that. Poor old machine. Now, if you'll forgive some poor editorial work, I only made it up to level 7 in the gameplay that I recorded. And since starting this review, I have looked on the internet and seen other people who are better at playing Psychon, and found that the game has only 10 levels, so I really wasn't that far off. And more importantly, that after the 10th level is an ending with text that explains the whole thing, gives context to the game, and certainly makes the earlier part of this video where I was wondering what the story could be entirely pointless. Sorry about that. But it is a testament to just how interesting the atmosphere of this game is that you can imagine so many scenarios of what it could be about. Maybe it should have had a little blurb at the beginning. Maybe it's best as it is, left to the imagination of the player until they reach that final shocking revelation at the end. Maybe I should just stop waffling on and finish the bloody review. You already know my high opinion of Psychon, but there's 3 things I need to tell you before I wrap this up. Firstly, the whole game is playable in 2-player simultaneous co-op, which is a very cool feature that I have not tried. Secondly, please excuse me for falsely intoning in gameplay videos of Psychon that I recorded last year that it has art assets from Alien Breed. It does not. I was completely mistaken. Every art asset is unique to this game, but it pays homage to Alien Breed, with its enemies looking very similar to Alien Breed's protagonist, but not the same. Thirdly and finally, Psychon 2 was released in 2016 for Windows, Mac and Linux, and you can download it. And now, Hover Car Racing by Richard Smithies, written in 14 weeks. With special thanks to Michael De Cruz for help with track design. We've got to leave that title in because it looks very cool. Hover Car Racing has very quiet audio, a background that looks like the carpet of a clubhouse or the upholstery on a bus, and a menu that is a cube saying "do" in stereo, which is very strange, but most importantly, it is a game about racing hover cars, which are like regular cars, except they hover because they're from the future. You can race these hover cars against the clock in time trials, or against 3 computer opponents, or even a second human. The game may take a few minutes to learn, especially if you're unfamiliar with top-down racing, and clearly this was my problem with it in 2012. I was biased against top-down racing games because I was bad at them. Turned my review into just vitriol and hate. I called this game horrible. I said that it was pretty much all crap, and that is just false. Well, I mean, it's all opinions, but it's just a terrible opinion to have. Why say such nasty things about hover car racing? A Net Yaroze passion project that, in the world of top-down racing games, actually handles quite well. There is a small problem with cars getting stuck together. They're just a little bit too magnetic. Okay, it's a pretty serious problem. Almost every time you collide with a car, you have to worry about getting diagonally attached to them. It's as if collisions are done on a per pixel basis, and the rough edges just cause the cars to stick together. I don't know if that's the case, but sometimes it gets very serious and you can't find a way out and you'll need to pause and quit. When you do pause, look at that menu. Hold on. The pause menu takes the screenshot of your game and you can move it around in 3 dimensions. That's something I would do. In the main arcade championships mode, where you race for as long as you like and the game keeps track of who's winning, you're given 10 characters to make your name, which is very generous, and you can respray your hover car any colour on the chart. A second player can join at any time. You can then use this sort of currency on the top left to buy things from the trading shop. Fuel to keep your hover car afloat, dumbfired missiles and intelligent homing missiles, mines to drop behind you, and turbo vapor stuff.
Oi mate, want some turbo vapor stuff?
The missile is not just a destructive weapon, it's a very helpful spatula in this game to get the hover cars unstuck. Now there's a gamble menu, but it's not what you think it is, because you're not betting on the race or anything. You're playing stacks, which is in fact the game of columns. Somehow, beyond belief, this tiny Net Yaroze game still managed to find room to contain a mini-game within that is columns. How did they do it? So you can play it against a second player, which I think is the original aim, but if you play it long enough yourself, you can still earn credits. Hardly any, but that doesn't matter. For a fun little distraction, it's amazing. Progress through the career and you'll make it to some tracks that aren't all flat and brown. These tracks are set in Japan, with elevated, extremely colourful roadways, besides skyscrapers so tall you can't see the ground below. Or maybe you can't see it for stylistic reasons. They work well, they're just low poly buildings, but they're not just low poly buildings. The way they look, with their coloured little square yellow windows, it's low poly, geometric, abstract Art Deco look, and I love it. It's timeless. Now on Japan Track 2, there's a section of basmati rice with sultanas in it, and if that's not what it is, I don't care because that's what it looks like. Now, take care not to run into the sultanas as they're an obstacle. It doesn't matter too much if you do though, because this track is a figure 8, and the AI never do it properly. They keep turning left, so you can't actually lose. I have a craving for yellow rice right now. Here's an unusual feature. You can change the UI text to at least 15 colours, including invisible. And in time trial mode, which has classes that I don't fully understand, in England, England. All this time, the featureless brown dustscape was England, the arid wasteland of Stoke-on-Trent in the 30th century Staffordshire desert. Anyway, I cycled through the Arcade Championship a few times, and Course 5 at night never seems to come up. I suppose you can only race it in the time trial mode, and it's a fun little challenge to have. In conclusion, pretty much all of hovercar racing is great. I may never discover why there's 2 Course 5s both at night, or if there's any other mini games in it, but I do want to learn how to make my own yellow rice. You've made it to the end of Side A. Time to flip over the tape. Welcome to Side B. Continue the adventure. Grav is short for Gravitation, developed by James Shaughnessy in 12 weeks. So, what is gravitation? Gravitation is the force by which every mass, every particle in the universe attracts and is attracted by every other particle. Holy fettuccine boscaiola, why is that so loud? This story begins in 1979. Just 192 years after the composition of Eine kleine Nachtmusik comes an unrelated work, Asteroids, a thrilling vector-based arcade game where you pilot an arrowhead-shaped ship much like this one through a field of rocky asteroids and blow them up. The design of the ship and the method of fluidly controlling it throughout space was carried through to successor games like Space Duel and especially Gravitar, so named because it has a great emphasis on gravity and uses the asteroid's ship to invade planets and blow up bases and fly through caverns. Now what should happen to those brave pilots and destroyers of asteroids on the rocky frontier when the war is over? In the United States after the First World War, many pilots were able to purchase their biplanes from the government and use them themselves, flying around touring the country in what was known as barnstorming, showing off aerobatic skills at county fairs. So maybe that's the high concept premise for Gravitation, barnstorming after asteroids. Of course, that would be missing out on the important link between Gravitar and this game, which was Thrust for the BBC Micro and other 8-bit computers. And its sequel, Thrust 2, which was not as good because the ship was an avocado. At least from what I've seen. I have not played Thrust or Thrust 2, but I have played Gravitation, and I can tell you things about it. It has reverse thrust, which is a very cool feature. It does not have music. You provide your own. That's what Mozart's doing here. Stop it, Mozart. Now the atmosphere is quite different, when you hear nothing but the white noise of the thrusters. So this game is about deftly piloting your way through small gaps across 9 different courses through gates to test your skills and speed at flying a 2D ship. When you're finished, you land the ship on any flat surface you can find, and it makes this wonderful little thud. I thought I was going to fall off. Let's try that again. The ship's landed. And then the game zooms out and does proceed to make the 3rd loudest sound ever made again. Every single time. You get used to it after a while. There are 9 maps of various complexity, all of which have extremely difficult time records set by Jim. On map 3, if you follow this green line, theoretically you can do 3 laps of this curvy maze in 1 minute and 33 seconds. Or if you're me, having your first attempt in a long time, flying carefully and cautiously and yet still touching the sides and exploding very frequently, over 7 minutes. Full throttle gameplay looks more like this. Given that map 1's a lot wider, it's easier to test your bravery here and work out how to fly into a wall at full speed and turn out of the way of your destruction. Takes a lot of practice. I'm getting there. Not really, I'm nowhere near the target time, but it's fun. I do enjoy the way this game feels to play. There's lots of power-ups you can find that, in single player, don't do anything at all. The weapons are for the dogfight mode, where you and a second player use these maps to hide and seek and destroy each other. But my weapons weren't working at all when I recorded. It's strange, I checked my footage from 11 years ago. You can fire weapons in single-player races when playing on a PS3 or a PS1. Maybe not on a PS2, or maybe just my PS2, or maybe my disc has a scratch on it. I don't know, it's a mystery. I still haven't had a proper dogfight, having no dueling partner for Gravitation, so I'll have to believe other players' testimonials from YouTube comments that it's really quite fun. Now a quick map review before we leave. Map 1 is the ABC logo, but don't tell it. Map 2, the iconic Tinsel Death Star speaker cone, has that unique challenge of getting into and out of the ring. Map 3 looks like a Worms map, and that is why it is so very difficult. This gnarled and twisty landscape is not the ideal environment to be flying a ship through. Map 4 is quite constricted too, but instead of a Worms map, it's like the Windows 3D Pipes screensaver. You're still supposed to take a curved path around these square obstacles though. Map 5 is your small intestine. That's what it looks like. Probably. Let's hope you haven't eaten a Gravitation ship recently. Well, that's what it would be doing. Probably broke it down into smaller pieces. What am I going on about? Map 6 is a fun one because I can actually go fast here. It's shaped like an hourglass and it is full speed all the way. Full speed, turn, air drift, whee! That is good. I haven't beaten the record, but I'm within 11 seconds of beating the record. Map 7 tests you with going along long straights and then doing hairpin turns. It is much more fun and interesting than it looks. You can't take the shortcuts unless you've recently exploded and you're going back to where you were up to. Or you could use them in the battle modes. This is probably more a race track than a battle track though. I didn't even think about two-player racing, that's a thing, it's not all dogfights. Now map 8 is like an ant nest. It's got lots of these pockets. I'm not very good at that. Map 9 looks like a bunch of vinyl records next to each other, but it's a Gymkhana donutty thing. If you feel like trying out Gravitation for yourself, you can, for free, by downloading the Windows, Mac, Linux or Android version at www.demonstudios.com. There is also a sequel with expanded features called Supergrav that you can buy. In the taxonomy of digging games, there's a line of evolution that runs from Dig Dug to Mr. Do to Digger to Boulder Dash and eventually to Minecraft, SteamWorld Dig and Deep Rock Galactic. But if you go back to Boulder Dash, stemming from there is a large family of games about 2D digging, being crushed to death by rocks and collecting gems. This is one of those games called Rocks and Gems. If you're not killed by a falling rock, you might be killed by the time limit. Finding 50 points worth of gems in this first level in 85 seconds is a huge task. So I turned it down to easy. That gives you an extra 50 seconds and you only need 45 points worth of gems. Reds are worth 1, green 2 and blue 3. That doesn't help if you get stuck though. I love the expressiveness of the character. Looks a bit like he's from South Park with those two very close together eyes. You can swipe a block clear without walking into it, which will save you in some situations. Some, not all. And there's so many cases where you can get completely stuck. No difficulty setting is going to change that. The only change is the clock and a reduced gem target. Which is really nice. By contrast, in Rocks and Diamonds, there is no difficulty setting and you always need to find every emerald in a level. Although there's also no time limit either. You're just given a score. Oh, I didn't introduce Rocks and Diamonds yet. So Rocks and Gems is similar to Rocks and Diamonds, which is based on Boulder Dash and Emerald Mine, which is also based on Boulder Dash, and Superplex. And it's an enhanced port that runs levels from Boulder Dash and Emerald Mine, Superplex, and Sokoban. And is a free game that you can still download and is still updated regularly. So Rocks and Gems is a more graphically advanced quasi-clone of Rocks and Diamonds, which is the open source port and clone of Boulder Dash and Boulder Dash's clones. And indeed, the first level of Rocks and Gems is similar to the first level of Boulder Dash, which you can play in Rocks and Diamonds, although this has a lot more rocks. Rocks and Gems is also a much faster game than Rocks and Diamonds. Look how fast I dig! The shovel is a blur. Did you even notice I had a shovel? Did you think I was removing the dirt with my face? I mean, maybe I'm shoveling it into my face. Maybe the character eats dirt. That would explain where it all goes. I can't think of any other place. I also don't know how side-scrolling dirt games possibly work. It's as if you're digging in a terrarium and asking a player character who could look into it, or indeed the player who was looking at the TV, which way to go. Because there's no way the protagonist could know what is below the rocks beneath their feet. But let's not think about that. Rocks and gems. I have only one gem left to find in this level. I don't think it'll be that gem. That one's too hard to reach. I went for the lower red gem, having cleared the path to push the rock out of the way earlier, and the exit was open. After starting the game 17 years ago, I found it. And it makes that unique sound and gives you a password. I did it! I beat level 1 of Rocks and Gems. Watch out for level 2. Oh, you'd better watch out for level 2. It's full of butterflies. And butterflies explode. What's your counter to that? What are you going to do about exploding butterflies? Try and time it right? Yeah, I tried that. Timing's not going to help. You need to learn how butterflies work. I don't even fully know how rocks work in this game. I'm pretty sure from Rocks and Diamonds that there's something about butterflies always running along the left wall and then turning... I don't fully know. What I do know is turn pad response to low. It took me far too long to work out that should say pad response time. Playing on high is essentially playing with a high response time or high input lag. You really want it to be low, so that you don't have to hold the thing for a few milliseconds before he starts running. I also know that it sucks to be crushed by your own gems. So the aim of this level then should be to run along and get the rocks to fall on the butterflies, a bit like Dig Dug. Easier said than done. Turbo Dig Dug is not my strong suit, especially without a bicycle pump. How am I supposed to do that? I understand the basics of luring a butterfly, digging a tunnel, dropping a rock on it. But once the level gets more and more open, there's less and less opportunities to drop the rock, especially if the butterfly is running along the outside of a cavern. I've not yet found a way to trap every butterfly in the level, which means I haven't passed the level. I died more than 150 times in level 2. Got my revenge on a few butterflies along the way, but I can't think of many games that have caused me this much suffering. Yes, a lot of it was on high pad response, which makes it unnecessarily hard, but even on low, I find this game harder than Devil May Cry 1. And apparently, according to Mah Jongg, it has 64 levels. Are you meaning to say there are 62 levels after level 2 that are probably harder? Yeah, I'm never going to beat this game. I think I should try Devil May Cry again. But first, how about something more relaxing? Welcome to the Incredible Coneman, programmed by Lars Barstad and Per Ivar Pedersen, with this fantastic title screen by Rune Solberg. Note the transparent Coneman face in the background. Levels and textures by Jostein Trondel, Frode Christensen and Bjørn Ulevoldsater. Now without further ado, let's fly into the world of the Incredible Coneman and discuss this incredible game. I assume you're familiar with Pac-Man. He's about yay tall, and he looks like a cheese wheel, and he's always on the move, always eating. His competitors greatly outnumber him and try to eat him whenever they can, but he has the tenacity to try and eat them all first. And that's the only chance Pac-Man has for survival, living life in the middle of the food chain. Always checking his corners for danger and bringing home dots to feed his wife and his 2 kids and pay his council rates. Coneman does things differently. He doesn't make quick, square turns. He's not always on the move. He's always staying still, unless you press forward. Or maybe he's always staying still all the time, and maybe the world moves around him. It's very hard to tell, given the camera is tidally locked with his head. And this level is also a head. There's a percussion sting when you pick up a star, as if it was something funny, but not quite funny enough to have 2 drum hits before the cymbal. And you get 5 seconds of high speed and invulnerability. Or not even quite 5 seconds. As far as I can tell, about 4 3/4. Would have been helpful if I had it now. Oh well. Has there ever been a more perfect musical equivalent to oh well? That's a shame. Minor inconvenience. Wow, wow, wow. Coneman's dead. That's fine. He'll get back up and keep doing his job because he's incredible. He's just an incredibly dedicated man. He puts up with all this stuff. Maybe he's a cleaner. Maybe Coneman is the garbage man. Who knows? Oh, I do like that drum fill. Wonderful level transition sound. You've now heard, I'm pretty sure, every sound in this game. That's all the music you'll hear. That 4-second bass groove, 2 groovy bars, 9 groovy notes, 4 groovy seconds ad infinitum. Get used to it. And the sounds of cones being eaten. They're not cones, they're square pyramids because it's better for the rendering budget. And the sounds of drums and saxophones of death. You can get the camera up real close. There's lots of different camera views. You can move it with the shoulder buttons as well. If you zoom in too far, you'll be backwards, which makes gameplay very difficult and confusing. Thankfully, you can use the shoulder buttons to rectify this. One of them fixes it, I can't remember which one, but keep pressing shoulder buttons, you'll find a camera angle that suits you. Want more advice? Don't walk down this corridor until you've checked that the blue ghost isn't going to follow you. That's just a simple mistake. The third level, we've gone out of the shower tiles and into the wood and grass, or maybe it's a pool table, I don't know quite what it's going for. I like the symmetry. It's a nice room. I love the aesthetics of the Incredible Coneman. I don't have any particular love for 25 frames per second, but that's the sacrifice you have to make to get the PS1 into its highest resolution mode. As far as I can tell, this looks to be almost 640 by 480. Anyway, I couldn't let it stop there. It's 3 levels. I wanted to see the rest. I don't remember how far through this game I was able to get as a child, but I wanted to know what all the rest of the levels looked like. So I ran through, lost most of my lives on level 2, but I was still doing better on level 3. And now, level 4 is robbed of a drum fill because you start on top of a pyramid. Then you have 96 more to find. What does it look like? Well, it's abstract. To me, it looks like a swimming pool, and it reminds me of rainbow ice cream with that pink and yellow splash on the walls. Was that the original intent? No idea. Does an artist's intent even apply to this? Well, it is art. Any thoughts of auteur theory can be left at the door, I'd say. What intention could there have possibly been when making the Incredible Coneman but to make a fun maze game that is 3D and very groovy? The result is evident. It's a funky, groovy, progressive jazz maze game that plays more like a stealth game or a survival horror game due to its tank controls. It's simple to play and addictive. It's hooky, it's catchy. It makes you want to see what all the rest of the levels are. Level 5 is blue. It's very blue. It's almost as blue as the blue to black transition in the background, which, if it were green, would look like the cover to Close to the Edge by Yes, but it's not green, it's blue. This level has no stars, so you just have to find all the stuff and hide in the little nooks and crannies. Level 6 is wheat. What? Why is level 6 wheat? Maybe there is a deeper meaning here. Maybe the first level, the bricky one, represents the neighborhood, and the second one is a shop, and the third one is something outdoors, and then the fourth one's like a bathroom, and the fifth you go to bed, and then in the sixth you wake up and have bread for breakfast. Maybe this is a day in the life of Coneman. Maybe they're intentionally vague so as to provoke deep thought and discussion. Ooh, edit time. Wasn't perfectly matched up, but that's the point. Level 7 here is... well, what is this? Is this a tribute to Pac-Man? Is that what that figure in the middle is? Is this some sort of museum? Or is it a hand puppet or a dinosaur? Or is it just the letter C? Is this level a copyright symbol? I'm not sure, but it's very un-maze-like, having no corridors and just lots of pyramids to collect around the jagged edges. And ghosts that you can walk straight around. It's really odd. We've thrown maze design structure completely aside now. Level 8 is an asterisk? The Union Jack? I don't know. Whatever it is, level 8 causes me some problems. How am I supposed to get the last 2 cones? I can't squeeze around the ghost to the left, and there's no way I'd be quick enough to go in on the right, as far as I can tell. I just don't know what to do with this situation. I'm sure there is a level 9 and 10 and more, but I don't mind. I had fun. Team Fatal presents a very impressive 3D logo. And attached to it, a game. An extraordinarily cinematic game for the 90s, especially considering it's a Net Yaroze game. Look at this, the seagulls, the scene, the sun being blocked out by the sail, the feather. It's all amazing. Terra Incognita, Latin for land unknown, is an action RPG of sorts. Like many RPGs, it starts with a text box conversation between 2 characters, in this case our protagonist and the helmsman with the bandana. To cut a long and hilariously translated story short, we're at an unknown land. There's rumours of treasure and also rumours of horrible monsters. So, I'm going to go get the treasure and the helmsman's going to stay with the boat. Fair enough. And as if it wasn't cinematic and impressive already, it just keeps going. Team Fatal presents Terra Incognita. They've already presented it a few times, but now it's being presented in this really clever cinematically framed gameplay. They've already shown off how bombs work, and the protagonist is running off with a box. Team Fatal consisted of Mitsuru Kamiyama, who is nowadays fairly famous at Square Enix, graphic designer Shintaro Tajima, and 3D designer Kunikatsu Tachi, who are less famous, but I must give them huge props for making this. It's got a chunky, square art style that has really aged extremely well. Retro-styled games today try to emulate this sort of look, and even modern voxel games go for this sort of simplicity. Grass, water, trees, square terrain. It's a good look. It's got a tutorial system that tells you how to read a signboard, but first you have to press the button to read the signboard. How does that work? Oh well. You have a jump button and a context-sensitive button that does everything else. You have camera controls where you can spin and scale it in every direction. Now it's not so difficult, is it? No, I suppose not. And I must say the music is wonderful too. I have to mention that before I make any cuts, because the music plays continuously and I'm going to make a big mess of it. There's your camera controls, we've spun around, and now time for some cutting. Wooden boxes can be stacked on top of the tutorial signboards, and this is a critical part of the game. It encourages really bizarre lateral thinking. Of course, if a wooden box on a signboard doesn't work, why not a wooden box on top of another wooden box on a signboard? Gravity is very nice here. Inside a chest you can get a heart vessel. This increases your maximum health. And this is the sword attack that I've been complaining about my whole life. it is just... it's not long enough, and it's a very, very awkward attack to use. I'll complain about that in more detail later when I have to hit something. Oh, and I should mention you can jump almost under a box to put a box onto your head, and then transfer it into your hands with the attack button, which makes its own unique sound effect and is therefore implied to be a serious mechanic in this game. Or it exists only to fix a bug. I'm not sure. There are jumps to be made onto levitating piles of bricks, because, you know, bricks levitate, and you can choose the perspective. So if you miss the jump, it's entirely on you because you had control of the camera. It was your choice not to look at that from a better angle. Also, I would not recommend changing the angle while crossing a bridge. There are enemy goo puddle things, which you can attack with your sword. They will fight you back. This one wasn't too strong. As it turns out, I was not supposed to hit it. What stumped me for years was this room and how to manage it. There is that sign in the corner, and it does give a pretty useful hint. Once you struggle through the bubbling goop, you will see it says, by riding on Slime Ball, you can go across to where you cannot without it. Riding on Slime Ball. Not the slimy enemy, but the little tiny ball projectile it shoots. That's the key to this room. I thought stacking boxes on top of tutorial signs was outside the box thinking, but this is a whole other level. And so the first time I ever made it past the slime room, I then immediately blew myself up. I couldn't let things end there though. I had another attempt at the game and made it further through. And I can tell you, when you're fighting against these cyan eggs or puddles or slimes or whatever they are, don't. Just don't. Your sword has all the sharpness and length of a cafe loyalty card, and hitting a monster with it will not earn you points towards a free coffee. It will give you nothing at all. At least most of the time. Maybe one or two of them drop something, but I think it's best to avoid encounters altogether. It's mostly a puzzle game. I eventually came upon a puzzle where the solution was to stack a box on top of a box on top of a bomb. And when that wasn't high enough, a bomb on top of a box on top of a box on top of a bomb. A live bomb that you have to jump on quickly and then off. And what's really fascinating is that when you get in here, there's actually other music in the game. Groovy synth pop that has been waiting to be played in this temple of doom and large space, lying dormant on this CD for 24 years. What else is in the temple? Columns with faces on them, in the water, that spit fire, of course. And what next? High protein Charizard. You know, upon further reflection, I don't think I want any treasure, and never wanted any treasure, and I think I'd like to leave. Is this the exit door, or is it the other one? I don't know. I don't know which way I came in here. What have you been eating while you're down here? Where do you got this protein from? How's your tail so long? How am I supposed to attack you with this ridiculously short sword when you have such a long tail and you breathe fire? You know what? This was never a fair fight. And so, the protagonist will not return. Our friend the helmsman will never see that guy with the sword again. Pressing onward, a thought is crystallized in the mind of our lonely skipper. Never get out of the boat. Bouncer 2. Bouncer 2. The sequel to Bouncer 1. Possibly, but Bouncer 1's not a Net Yaroze game. This Bouncer 2 is so bouncy even its menu bounces. A feature rarely seen, because why on earth would you... Anyway, Bouncer 2 was made by Scott Evans as his first Net Yaroze project, and what an impressive project it is. It's the only game in existence to say triangle to release bloke. And that is because when you press triangle, the bloke is released to bounce onto this piston springy trampoline thingy and launch the other bloke into the air. Oh, try not to make him go splat. That's the whole aim of the game. Don't let the blokes go splat. Do let them smash blocks with their heads. Much like Breakout and much more like Circus. The 1977 game that was the first to replace the paddle in the ball and paddle versus bricks with a seesaw and 2 clowns. Bouncer 2 takes the basics from Circus and combines them with the features of the many other block-breaking games released between 1977 and 1998. The word satisfying is thrown about a lot these days, but there's something very satisfying about this game's punchy physics. It feels good in any block-breaking game to get behind the bricks and break several in one bounce, but with this game's speed and sense of gravity, it feels extra satisfying. It's also extra hard to catch these blokes, so it's a good thing that they're magnetic to help them land in the right place. You can't use the magnet all the time though. It's just for brief course correction and to help get momentum pointing the right way. Like Jet Rider. Jet Rider has a magnet button, but that's for making hairpin turns on a flying bike, so it's not like this. It did take me a while to work out the method of getting momentum to the right or left, switching sides and combining it with magnetism to get the blokes where you want them in the air. When you do work it out though, oh, the things you'll be able to do. You'll be able to beat the first level. You don't need to break every block, just get all the diamonds. And then things get really cool from there on out. Score bonuses are a nice arcadey feature, and I really like the UI and sounds, but not quite as much as I like what's happening here in the second level. Armoured blocks and brick through, my favourite power-up from DX Ball 2. With these similarities, it's quite possible then that Bouncer 2 is the DX Ball 2 of Circus clones, and I can really think of no higher praise to give it than that. That is a very high bar to set. And Bouncer 2 doesn't have all the power-ups. There's no multi-bloke, well that's probably for the best, or there'd be dead blokes laying everywhere. And I don't think I can get laser cannons for the edge of the bat. There are warps though, to take you instantly to the next level, which is exciting. Warps give players that haven't yet gotten very good at the game an exciting sneak preview. Oh, I just got another warp. The game was being pretty generous to me on this run. Unfortunately, I'm just too good at landing wrong to get any further. Losing lots of blocks from the bar feels bad, but not nearly as bad as losing a second bloke immediately. And my final bloke fell just seconds later. Fortunes change so quickly in Bouncer 2. I want to see that level in the background. I wonder which number that one is. I won't find out for some time. At least that gives this game lots of replay value. The amount of attempts it would take me to get to, say, the 10th level would last me a very, very long time. At least I can leave happy for now that I once got a score high enough for some fireworks. Oh, I said happy. Well, here comes the darkest, dreariest, gloomiest, evilest game on this disc. Slowly tumbling towards us is the name of the game, Clone, which is still tumbling and upside down and sideways, and that was an unnecessary spin. Alright, come on, Clone. There we go. Clone. So bright. Clone was developed by Stuart Ashley and features, disturbingly, no Net Yaroze splash screen card thing, so I don't know how long it took to develop. I do know that it's a Doom clone. Let me show you. Alright, that's pretty cool, and does remind me a lot of The Matrix. Must have been inspired by trailers for The Matrix, since, anyway, enough talking about The Matrix. You have keys, there are doors, there's a heartbeat, animated mud floor for some reason. Everything in this game exists to be unsettling. particularly the enemies, which are models of a skeletal system with huge blue eyes and pulsating blue cores on their sternums. Why? I don't know. It's a strange monster. All I do know is this: Clone is a Doom clone that I once found very scary. It is certainly scarier than Doom most of the time. It has these barriers you can destroy that have monsters behind them, and you shoot at them with a gun that has infinite ammo, and you can also fire it automatically by just holding X. For the longest time I thought I had to tap. Your task is to find the keys, and to help you do that is a map system very much like the one in Doom. I'm really quite impressed how many parts of Doom this game was able to copy and get working on a Net Yaroze, and not only that, running at a superior frame rate to the original Doom, which was at the time capped at 35 Hz on PCs, and the PlayStation version of Doom ran much worse. And yet this is a 50 FPS first-person shooter on the PlayStation. Possibly the only one. The graphics are simple, but the smoothness is worth it. Impressive stuff when you're not being terrified by it. That's Clone. You blast at the enemies. Are they the clones? Clone skeletons? You find keys, and you find the red flashing area that acts as the elevator. How about sound effects? When you pick up a health kit, you make the sound of Doom Guy taking damage, because things are backwards in Clone World. I don't know where the enemy screams come from, but the fireballs they shoot make the sound that's used in heaps of Hollywood movies for petrol being ignited. While I'm talking about sound effects, the televator in Blitter Boy, it makes the same sound as Gigantor's remote control. I don't know if that's the original source, but that is hugely relevant. Clone is an interesting tech demo. It has 4 levels, and then it repeats. And now, Between the Eyes. Now this is how you finish a disc. What is between your eyes? Your nose and the front of your brain, which has just melted. Congratulations. Welcome to Between the Eyes, developed by Lewis Evans, a game about flying chrome starships through decagonal tunnels textured in lurid demo scene insanity. Why? Because why not? It's just absolutely wild. And yes, this is another game with a very short music loop that never ends. Although of course you can change it to whatever you like. You can use the tracks that are already included on this demo disc, or take the disc out and put in any CD that's in your house. You are not ready, and you never will be, for whatever is going on in this game. Animated walls, flashing walls, every track has something different. And you know how many tracks there are? 64. 64 tracks that you can race on with a variety of different ships against opponents or by yourself in free practice. You can view the tracks from the outside. You can even view the tracks from the inside. This game has a massive amount of options. Nobody would have thought this game needed to exist until it did, and then its reason would have become clear. First there were kaleidoscopes, then music visualization software, then Between the Eyes. It is the natural progression of things. Track 24 looks like a house key. I don't know. On the inside it's just mostly red, so this will give your eyes a little break from the crazier tracks. In a race against 3 opponents, you can see that bumping into them is very bad for your speed. It seems to stop you almost instantaneously. And on some tracks I have a lot of difficulty getting past them, but on other tracks I'm able to win. Of the tracks, the first 32 have horizontal turns, and the other 32 have vertical ones. And some of them, like track 33, have sections that are pitch black and very hard to navigate. Ah, there's the exit. But yeah, there's no mix of horizontal and vertical turns at any point, so you're always racing on one plane, which means it doesn't feel so much like a flying racing game, but it does make it much simpler to play. And it's still interesting. Turning vertically, it's not something you do every day. And you shouldn't play this game every day. Your eyes will fall off. I'm kidding. Maybe. There are so many textures in this game. I have no idea how to count them. This one looks like Spider-Man. That's on track 37. On track 52, we've got splotches that change colour. Whatever they're supposed to be. Heliozoans, I've got no idea. All I know is I'm flying a TIE fighter through colours and listening to sounds. Do you think this sounds a bit like Smooth Criminal? Just a little bit. So as you run under the table, eating sushi with a label, and are you okay? I don't know. I really like the patterns on this track though. Track 42 is so nuts. All this game is so nuts. It has 2-player split-screen racing as well, I just remembered. I've not given that a try in a long time. Bring a friend who wants to find out what's between their eyes. And, okay, track 42 has its pitch black tunnel in it as well. Maybe I can't recommend it. Oh, I found the way out. So exciting! Okay, our eyes have had enough. In conclusion, the heyday of the Net Yaroze was short-lived. There was no successor kit for hobbyist game makers on the PlayStation 2, but in the generation that followed, widely internet-enabled consoles allowed for content generation and sharing in games like Little Big Planet and Mod Nation Racers. I'd say the closest thing PlayStation has to a Net Yaroze successor today is Media Molecule's Dreams, which was finally released in 2020 and is much more approachable than a mail-order dev kit. Although the tutorials are really complicated. I'll figure them out one day. But for now, that was a review of some Net Yaroze games. Just 14 special ones that were on a disc, out of many thousands that were made and are still being made today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time for reviews of things that aren't Net Yaroze games. SnakeOfBacon signing out.